I've been thinking a lot. Well, that's not a good thing all the time, right? So that's nothing to be proud of. But I've been reading and working with the issues of fear. And fear and anger, actually, the two combined. And with my Elkhorn group, we've had kind of an ongoing discussion for off and on for the last several weeks about anger, because primarily because of things that are going on in our country and the world, out of frustration. And how do we deal with that anger? And what does the Buddha teach about anger? And a lot of times we don't like what the Buddha says about anger. So it's our natural tendency to want to hang on to anger, because we especially if we have righteous anger. So and working with anger, I thought we've got to work with it from a different direction. So what I've been feeling lately is that connection between anger and fear. So when we think about anger, what do we know is at the base of anger? Fear, right? Now, whether we believe it or psychologists will say at the root of anger is fear, right? So it's not just the Buddha talking about that, but it's really hard for us sometimes to see our own connection between our anger and fear. So I'd like to take a few minutes for each one of you to try to think about what you're angriest about in your personal life. Not many of us have mastered eradicating anger. If you have, we'll let you speak in a minute, but we can call it. When I was younger, I was in graduate school, and I used to think that I wasn't angry. And I really believed I wasn't angry. And I was so deluded. I was so angry that I couldn't even think I was angry. And all it would take, is something to really go wrong in my life, or something to fall apart that I had depended on. And then there was this kind of anger, this rage, this thing that, because I denied so much that I was ever angry, when it did come up, it was horrible. And it would just blast anything out of existence, in front of it. And I think it was because I was very angry. And so the more anger that there was, the more I wanted to deny it, because I had no idea what to do about it. And I went through another phase doing loving kindness practice where I'd get to the difficult person part. And I'd think, I don't really have too many difficult people in my life. And for a long time I could use my mom, and then I lost the ability to do that because I just discovered how much we love each other. And I'd try to do it with, political people. And it's still there. What I realized was we call anger different things sometimes. We'll say, I'm not angry, I'm just a little resentful, or I'm just a little irritated, or I'm disillusioned, or the favorite one is a parent. I thought this was good parenting. I'd tell my kids sometimes, I'm just disappointed in you. That's a terrible thing, right? But I wasn't going to say I'm angry with you because you spilt milk all over the floor and then poured cereal on top of it to see what would happen. So we use a lot of language and a lot of words to convince ourselves that we're not angry. If we're on we can use... I guess it would be part of that spiritual materialism. We can cover up our emotions that are negative. Like we may get into what we call a spiritual path because we want to work with negative emotions. Our emotions may be overwhelming to us, so we want to find a way to deal with them. And it becomes too easy sometimes to just learn the vocabulary of how to cover those emotions up. And we can talk the talk, right? So we're not revealing our true feelings because we know that they're not maybe politically correct or very nice or not acceptable, but we haven't really worked with those feelings. We've just learned a way to basically repress them. So all the words that we use, instead of saying I'm angry, there are probably at least 100 or 200 words that we could, if we really were able to watch our speech, we'd realize, I think that's still anger. So, when the Buddha talks about the three poisons that are that are involved in everything that keep us on this wheel of life, it's greed, hatred, and delusion. So it's greed, which is wanting, craving, lusting. Greed, it's wanting more, it's wanting better, it's wanting, period. And then hatred. Hatred, we can all say, I don't hate anybody. But hatred covers all those words that we use to cover up anger. Disappointed, disillusioned, a little bit upset, frustrated. You probably have your personal favorites if you start thinking about the words you use to let someone know that you're not pleased with I'm not pleased with your behaviors. Those, that's anger. There's anger there. And we don't want to even acknowledge that that's anger. I'm just a little irritated. Or I'm just trying to teach that person, better how they should be. But we have to look at that because that's one of the three things that's keeping us attached to this human life or animal life. So the third is ignorance, delusion. And that's the kind of ignorance, that's not like, you don't know anything about sports, you're ignorant, or Michael Jackson calling people ignorant all the time. That's a kind of basic not seeing things clearly, not being able to see the reality that is this world. So it's an ignorance that goes much, much deeper than we just don't know something about a subject. Or not couth or whatever we want to say. It's that essential misunderstanding about reality. We don't see things clearly. And we can do it. It can be intentional, but usually it's unconscious. We haven't developed the skillfulness to begin to see clearly. We haven't been able to let the scales fall from our eyes. That's a Christian image that I think is really powerful. Just the scales falling from someone's eyes. You literally can, sometimes in a split second you can see something clearly. You can think of maybe someone said something to you and you didn't really want to hear. You didn't really want to, let's say if it's someone you're intimate with, you're connected to, you're in love with. They have revealed something about themselves, but it doesn't fit your image of how your loved one should be. So we just pretend we didn't hear it, or we pretend they didn't mean it a certain way. Or maybe one of your relatives is really a racist, but you love them and you see so many good qualities in them, so you just don't want to deal with that part of them. You don't want to see it. So we can do that out of love, or we can do that out of delusion. We can love someone and see their faults and see their humanness and still love them. But then there's the other way that we often do is we want to not see those parts, right? So we're always working with those poisons, and they're at the center. If you see the wonderful Tibetan picture of the samsara, which is that wheel of life, the center of it are the three poisons. They're at the center of that wheel. And it's not until we completely let go that we let go of all attachments and greed, hatred, and delusion or attachments. We're not liberated and completely free until we've let go of everything. Like it's all of the grasping, all of the hanging on to things. So anger, I think, is one of the things we hang on to because it's protecting us. Anger protects us. Anger is that biologically, that's that either fear, flight, or being frozen in the headlights reaction. So anger is something that back in our more primitive stages, we needed that to survive. We had to get that rush of adrenaline that told us to be afraid. So our choice would be to be angry, or to just shut down and freeze, or to run away. So if we can begin to see where the fear is and what the fear is with the things that we're angry about, the more we can begin to see that, and that means sitting with it. That means not running away from the anger and not trying to pretend it's not there, but literally when you're sitting with yourself and practicing, you can have that sit with yourself and feel your anger, and then feel what's under it. Feel where the fear is coming from. So it might be because you think if this whatever thing that you're feeling anger towards, that represents maybe something that's changing in your world, or changing in your life, and you don't like to see change. You don't know, there's confusion about change. We don't know where it's going. Is it a bad direction? Is it neutral? So it can be because there's a fear of losing something, or there can be fears that maybe it's maybe the thing that you're angry toward is kind of pulling you, like you see there's too much about it that might even be appealing to you. You don't see other options. But you really have to find out what it is that's creating the fear for you. And just let go of the idea. Don't try to fight. Try just to suspend for a short time any belief you have that fear is good, that anger is good. So some of us will fight to the death almost, which is a good image, that anger is a good thing. Anger tells us when we need to pay attention. Anger tells us when we need to become activated, to even become socially active. But what we know the Buddha taught over and over in so many different ways is that we can't overcome hatred with anger. Love is the only thing that overcomes hatred. And that we can't act from a place of love and loving kindness if we're angry. That anger clouds our vision. So it's true that when we feel something that's like anger rising in our body, and this is another reason it's so important for us to be with our body, sit with our body, and know what's going on in our body. When we feel those emotions, anger is dark, and anger takes our breath away. If you're really angry with someone, you can't breathe. And you feel your heart pounding faster. That's anger. And so you can learn to start putting a lid on that before it comes out in speech. But we can also start looking at that anger when we feel it and immediately try to see what's under this anger. They'll be good when they come in. I want to finish up. We want to look and see what the fear is for us. What are we going to lose? What do we think we may have to give up? And if it's is it fear for our own safety? Is it fear for our own, will we be able to continue to live the way we're living? Or is something going to change all that? It's really, that's what we need to be working with. But try to just suspend any feeling that that you're not angry, or that anger is an okay thing. And I think there's a really wonderful article by Bhikkhu Bodhi in this recent Tricycle magazine that just came out. And if you don't get Tricycle, that article, if anybody would like it, I can send you the article. But Bhikkhu Bodhi, in the Buddhist tradition, and especially in the Theravada tradition, there has long been a feeling that we shouldn't get involved in politics and social action because we should just be separate from that. We're not going to have view. The Buddha taught part of what we have to let go of are all of our views, all of our opinions, all of our attitudes towards things. So that's part of that total liberation, is letting go of viewpoints. So that sounds like letting go of any political viewpoints, right? But Bhikkhu Bodhi I respect him as a Western monk who lived for such a long time and is probably the foremost translator of the Buddha's teachings into English. He decided several years ago that he had to make a decision about what kind of social action he would be involved in, because he said the world needs us. The world needs people who are trying to see things clearly and who are trying to bring the idea back into our society that anger doesn't conquer hate. Hate never conquers hate. Love alone can do that. And so his first thing he did was to say the one problem he knew had to be solved was hunger. And so he put all of his social action energy into solving world hunger. And he created a board, and they fund little micro businesses. There are walks all over the country. And he has raised unbelievable amounts of money all over the world. And he does it locally, and they feed people locally. They support nonprofit groups that feed people and that teach people, gardening projects, and they do things all over the world. And now recently there's been another move it started in New York. There are more movements of Buddhists saying, okay, the world right now needs us. We can't sit back and say, no, we're not going to get involved because we're just going to sit back and radiate loving kindness. It would be nice, and we still have to keep doing that, but we have to get our feet wet. We have to, wade out in the river and radiate loving kindness. But his article is wonderful talking about that. We have to do it because what we can bring to the discussion is this quality that, no, we can't use anger to fight hatred. We have to use love. We have to use our calm minds to work to find solutions to big problems. And if we can do anything to help the society become more loving, less angry, then that's a responsibility we have, because that's a direct part of our teachings. So we have to do that by beginning with ourselves. We can't ever forget that. We have to maintain that peace within ourselves, and we have to know that whenever we lose it, we have a way to come back to it. Because things will always get us agitated, disappointed, disillusioned, irritated. But we have to always have that tool, and we can't let our tools get rusty. So we have to have a strong practice. We have to have a community to find support in. But then I think we are people well trained to be people who can be out in society and bring equality to the discussion that doesn't exist right now. So, thank you, everyone.